I thought that maybe it was too soon to make this video because maybe what I have to say is something that people aren't exactly ready to hear, but maybe now is the time to say it because if no one else is talking about it, then it will really stick out. A lot of times, the people telling the stories that stick out and who are called crazy in the moments are the ones who eventually make the most sense. But Americans' attention span is especially short. Whenever a big event happens, it seems that the media covers it extensively for weeks. People are obsessively interested in it for a while, and then the next big thing happens, and people forget where their attention was directed just a couple of weeks beforehand. Right now, Charlie Kirk's assassination is what everyone is talking about, and we should absolutely be talking about it. This is probably the craziest act of political violence America has seen since JFK. And the reaction from many people on the left is simply inexcusable. I talked about this 2 days ago, and honestly, for the sake of what I have to say, I don't want to rehash it. But I will sum it up by saying that what I've seen from the American left has me outraged, and Charlie's legacy has really inspired me as a content creator to never let my voice be silenced or blunted again. Charlie was a truth teller. And for the sake of truth, I want to say something about this whole situation that doesn't seem right to me. Right now, I'm collaborating with another creator to make a video on MKUltra, which, if you aren't aware, is a CIA program where they attempted to create political assassins. The book I referenced as source material is called Chaos. And honestly, keep an eye out for my video coming out about it, or even better, read the book, because it opened my eyes to a lot of crazy things that our government has done in the past. But the main point is, elites use assassinations and shock factors as psyops to distract the American population. Does anyone remember what the American public was talking about just a few weeks ago? Something they obsessively wouldn't drop despite explicit instructions from elites to do so? I made a couple of videos about that too, and I think the YT algo hurts your reach when you reference a subject, so I'll just do a pop-up and say that it rhymes with Peppery Pepstein. This is something that elites on both sides of the political aisle didn't want people talking about. Something that, despite the backlash, only grew in popularity on major search engines like Google. Where's the list? Why were we all of a sudden pretending that it didn't exist when people very clearly said it did? Who in power would be held accountable for refusing to bring the facts to light? And this wasn't a question that one side of the political aisle was asking. Democrats and Republicans were united on this question. Who was covering this up? Why were they doing it? Who in power did the information on that list threaten? And then, out of the clear blue sky, a very theatrical and very tragic thing happened. A transgender individual who legally changed their name from Robert Westman to Robin Westman opened fired on Catholic school children during their first Mass of the year. This tragedy made headlines and sparked righteous outrage from the right over the political violence displayed by this individual and ignited some tension. Radical leftists whined about the shooter being misgendered and expressed fear that the tragedy would further alienate the trans community. Robin was extremely troubled and quite theatrical in much of what he did, labeling his bullets and magazines with various political rants. The videos he took documenting his preparation were disturbing and attention-grabbing, painting a clear picture for those tuning in. And I think maybe the picture was painted purposely. It seemed a little too theatrical. What were they trying to distract us from? This became a heated debate for a while, but America's attention span was unusually long in this instance. We mourned the tragedy, but got back to asking an important question. Where was Peffrey Pepstein's list? That question continued to be ignored, and then a similar tragedy hit. Charlie Kirk's assassination. Even though the right and left were united in pressing Washington for answers, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The divide was complete. People on the right, libertarians, and anyone with sense were heartbroken and horrified. What compelled such a senseless act of violence? And then the left's reaction came. They just couldn't help themselves. The party of love and tolerance showed how loving and tolerant they really were. They celebrated Charlie's death, and the right was even more outraged. How could they? And this is a good question. But again, something felt off about this to me as well. Once again, the shooter was extremely theatrical. He, like the attacker before him, also wrote political messages on the bullets he used. But do we honestly believe he acted alone? Maybe he did, but what if he did? What if the two shooters with transgender ideology who wrote political slogans on their bullets and acted in much the same way were using the same playbook? What if they had handlers? What if, at a time when the elites in Washington, D.C. were facing the most scrutiny they ever have over a deep state cover up, they decided that something needed to happen to divide America? They did this with the anti hippie movement, killing several civil rights activists. The CIA did this in Vietnam, where they killed Vietnamese civilians and manipulated the evidence to make it look as if the Viet Cong did so. This became known as Operation Phoenix. And there's a theory floating around that the CIA did the same thing with the Charles Manson murders, which I also plan to cover at some point on this channel. My point is, the deep state knows how to divide the American people. What if the acts of political violence we've seen in this country are connected? What if Charlie Kirk's assassination was a smokescreen to distract America from looking too hard for too long in the right direction? Again, none of this is to distract from the events surrounding Charlie Kirk's death, which are tragic and deserve attention. But I think Americans should pay attention to and not compromise when it comes to asking the right questions. Did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? Where is that list? And is there a cover-up going on? If you enjoyed this content and would like to see other conservative YouTube commentary, check out my content library in the description below, and be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification to stay tuned.